Well, thank you for joining us today. And as we wrap up this series on our church history, I just want to take a moment and I want to thank Ed Cron and Mark Allward for joining me. It was really, really fun. Even though there was no operating furnace in the building at the time, it was cold. You could probably tell with hands in our pocket and all these other, scenarios playing out as the video is going on. But we had a great time doing this, and I've had some great feedback with this midweek connection. And even as we plan to eventually reopen soon, as the government is slowly releasing different aspects of our society, been suggested to continue doing this, have some sort of online presence. And so we are looking for a little bit of feedback, different topics, different ideas, different things we can talk about. Probably bring Dwayne Green back. Also have different guests like global workers and whatever we can do to continue connecting in the many different ways that we have discovered. And so thank you once again for joining us. A special note before I start this video is I want to make sure everybody realizes I love Alan Douglas. He's a great brother in the church. He's a faithful member in our community, and I say this because I do a couple of Alan Douglas impersonations. Some secrets are revealed, and but we have a good time. And Alan, if you are watching this, I love you, man. We've had our disagreements, but we are still good friends, good brothers in Christ. And yes, you learn a couple secrets of mine, as the whole church is going to learn. And so sit back, enjoy this last segment of the history of our church. There's so much that we could talk about and so much that was missed. But here we go. Well, and I think moving forward, this church still has a lot of more years ahead of it. Quite a few new families have come in. I don't know if they've already shut the video off at this point because they're like, I don't know who these three characters are doing and why they're doing it. I'm even hesitant to say their names because I'll probably forget one of them. But you know, we have a new crop of people that are almost I don't even want to say the next generation because they're not that much younger than me. But they're here and they're wanting to reach out and they're wanting to continue that legacy of this church being a community church.
I had a natural experience that taught me a lesson, which was I had a really nice property and I had all this gardens, and it was the 1st of June and everything was looking wonderful. And one night, deer had jumped the fence and clear cut. 1st of June. And so all my perennials were gone. And I'm like, great, what do I do? And I cared for them as best I could, but nothing happened. I mean, you clear cut something in June, it's done. Of course, next year, all came back. And the truth that I learned that time was, if you have good roots, no matter what happens, a little bit of rain, a little bit of sunshine, it'll come back. And this church has good roots, no matter what. And they're deep into this community, and it's based on caring for people. And that will hold it in good stead. I really believe that.
Well, Mark could testify to this. Like, not too long ago, there were no kids here.
No.
It was, you could hear a pin drop, but now there's usually kids just.
It's wonderful.
It's an old expression, but there is a lot of truth to it. And that it's just, people don't really need to care how much you know. They don't need to know how much you care. And yes, there's that typical thing that people can define what caring is and all that, but in general, it just comes from the heart. I mean, I look to what's going on right now in our long-term care homes, and it's very upsetting. And unfortunately, the challenge with my life story is the fact that I've seen what my mom has done over the decades of my life. And she's cared for those people and said, ladies and gentlemen, wake up. This is not gonna end well.
And she's a very vocal woman.
But no, but you know, I understand why when she walks in the room of administrators, they wouldn't listen. But at the same time, I've watched how her whole life's work has been caring for the forgotten people.
Yep.
And I hope that some of the things that happen now make us realize that maybe we need to pay attention to the forgotten people. And whether governments and other things do or not, you need to care about those in your community. You know, back to the principles of the book, who is your neighbor?
Yep.
Love thy neighbor. I think everybody's about big this and big that. Start with loving your neighbor and see what happens. And I think, in a lot of cases, that's even like with Mark and Mr. McCallum. I mean, just the people around you are the sphere of influence that you can do right to, and start there.
Well, you mentioned your mom, so I don't think this video should end without mentioning your dad, because I know he has been one of the most, I would say that there's been a lot of influential people in the church, and some of them are still in the church, and I'm not mentioning their names because some of them don't want to be mentioned. I know their personality, and they probably would be offended if I actually mentioned them. And
That's fair.
but Whithold probably wouldn't want to be mentioned either. But he's not here to tell me not. But I did have the honor of sitting on one of my only time on the board, actually. He was on the board. And I remember sitting in board meetings with him, and he wouldn't say a word. And then all of a sudden, at the end of like a 30-minute discussion, he finally speaks. He tells us the solution to the problem. And everybody at the table goes, Whithold's right. And then that was the direction we went. And in my mind, I'm thinking, this would have been a lot quicker if he just spoke up in the first place. But he would always wait. I think he was processing it in his mind, hearing everybody's opinion, everybody's viewpoint, allowing for everybody to speak, and then putting that all together and formulating some great mathematical equation that equaled, this is your solution.
It's hard to know what to say, because sometimes, I think of being both the son of my parents, and
Well, we could ask Mark.
yeah, look, I didn't know what Mark sees, but sometimes, I mean, there are so many outward things that are very similar to my mother, but I don't want to scare people, but inside there's a lot of Whithold too.
Oh, I believe it. I look at you and your sister, and I think Esther has a little bit more of your dad.
Yes.
And then you have a little bit more of your mother. But I can see both inside of both of you.
It's hard to describe what it's like to sit here right now after having sat there.
And I'm sure Whithold had an influence on your life.
He scared me.
He scared you.
He didn't talk much. When he did, he's usually telling me not to do something.
But
No.
in such a way that you didn't argue.
No, Trina.
Yeah.
No, very gentle and persistent.
Just very, just.
And I don't know if it was Whithold that had the influence on this decision, but my first year on the board, I remember saying we needed projectors. And so I sat down and I put together this whole plan of finally getting rid of the overhead thing that was over there and it was great. I remember flipping the songs.
I did those.
Yep. That was an official title at one point. The person
Song
who put the person who put the things on the projector.
You'd go to the box and you'd pull
Yeah,
out and
that's right. That was the job description.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I had that job.
Yep.
So, but I remember the projectors, and I drew out this whole plan of actually getting rid of. I didn't understand the whole V-shaped thing with the cross, and being new to the church, I was like, that just doesn't make sense to me. So I said, why don't we just tear that down and put a screen up? But I remember being so nervous about that, thinking, what if this is like a sacred idol in the church, or one of these things? And so we sat in that board meeting. I presented it, and I don't know whether it was Whithold's influence or what it was, but it passed. And then I remember a board member that wasn't on the board from the year before. He came to me and he said, "How'd you do it?" I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." And he says, "I presented the same thing last year and it didn't pass. And you present the same thing and it passes." And I was like, I don't know, maybe you planted the seed, and sometimes those things take time. Change takes time. I remember, I don't know if Alan Douglas remembers this, and we'll get back to Whithold in a minute, so I'm going to let you process your thoughts. I don't know if Alan Douglas remembers this, but it was about 4-ish years ago, and we were looking at the pews, and I said, wouldn't it be nice to go to chairs? And Alan Douglas immediately went, oh, that'll never happen. That's my best Alan Douglas impersonation.
Yes.
And immediately I took that and I was like, he is the one person I need to win over first. Before I win over anybody else in the church, Alan is the one I need to win over. And so I purposely, and so Alan's going to know my secret now. I purposely, when we went to go look at the chairs, I brought Alan with me. And when he sat in those chairs, he was like, whoa, these are comfortable. And Alan's style, because we all know Alan, he even sat in the seams between the two chairs, and he was like, "Oh, I can't even tell the difference." And I'm probably going to be fired as a pastor now doing Alan impersonations on camera.
As church seats go, those are good. Those are good.
Those are good chairs.
Those are great church seats.
And Alan was the one 4 years ago saying, "No, we'll never go to chairs." But he was the one going around the whole church, telling people, "Oh, you need to sit in this chair. You need to sit in this. You need to see how comfortable it is before we buy them." And he was the one promoting them. I didn't have to promote them. And so change, it takes time.
Good ideas can wait. Good ideas don't need. They can. Yeah.
And I think that's what Whithold knew, was a good idea.
Yes.
It can wait.
Yes. And then what, right?
And then what after that?
Right.
Then you have to implement the plan after.
But he was just relax for a second. Yeah.
Do you know Whithold's favorite song? Would you even play it?
I don't even. When I think of my dad in music, one of the pictures that stand in my mind is him playing the trumpet, and I think that kind of went by the wayside for whatever reason. And so the instrument that is kind of grounded him in his music was one that I didn't get to see a lot of later. So to grab a quick song that comes to mind, I'd have to. I'll tell you a Whithold story though. I was at a spot, and it was a very pivotal moment. I was having to deal with marriage falling apart, and of course, based on how you can imagine I was raised, like it's not even
Well,
something.
Mark was scared of him.
Yeah, but I mean, but in general, the way both from a family standpoint and a just my whole family cultural standpoint, church included, the thought had never even come to mind. I mean, the fact that things don't go well, yeah, okay, or you've made a mess of your bed and it stinks, yeah, okay, but the idea had never come to me as a possibility. And so I was finding myself in a pretty rough spot, just trying to comprehend how the life was going to go after this, and the way things looked for me. In a lot of ways, I couldn't imagine much good coming. And as I saw what my life was likely to look like, and I'm throwing some tools of description in the trunk with disgust, my father just said, "Your life isn't over yet, son." And there was a long period of time where I thought, you don't know what you're talking about. And to a certain extent, I was right. And then there were significant moments where all of a sudden my life changed. And I don't think I could have known then, had I known then how long it would have been for things to turn around. It would have been tough. If somebody would have said, okay, you're going to go through 10 years of unspeakable, and after that, it'll still be unspeakable, but you'll have a reason for having gone through it. I don't know if I would have taken that option. But at this point, I'm looking back at the things that I've been able to do in the last 5 years. And I'm thinking, Dad, you were right. And when I look at what's happening here and with the church and stuff like that, I just think of the words of my dad, we're not done yet. If I can give anything wise words from my father to pass at this moment, it's from that moment in time when he just said, "You're not done yet."
No,
And
this
I
church
don't-
is nowhere near being done.
and I believe that just,
I don't know, the Star Trek analogy kind of pops in my head where you have Star Trek and then you have Star Trek The Next Generation. And this is what I see happening now. Like I might have been at the at the end of the original series or something like that because I was here in the 90s. But now there's this whole new crop of people that if I could leave them with any sort of encouragement would be, you are the next generation. It's time to take hold of the reins. Like some of them are on the board now, and it's time to take hold of those reins, and it's time to go forward and continue what has started since '67.
this building was built on a good foundation, it has good roots, and it will, like you said, it'll be different.
Yep.
It'll be different, but it's still something worth fighting for and moving forward.
It is very much so. We need one last song to end this.
I know, I gotta come home.
hands, but
That's not what we do now.
social distancing, it's not what we do now. But one day we will again.
Again, thank you for spending this time with us. It was a lot of fun. Again, thank you to Ed Cron and Mark Allward for joining me. And once again, there was so much history of our church that there is so much that we missed and didn't even talk about it as soon as the camera was done rolling. And we ran outside to go warm up. We even started talking about Carrie Reith and the work that she's doing in Zambia. And there's so much history in our church, and we have so much to look forward to. And as Ed Cron so beautifully put it, we have deep roots in our community, and there's such a bright future ahead of us. So let's strive forward. Let's look forward to what God is going to do. This is nowhere near the end. Maybe it's even just the beginning. Who knows how much longer the Lord shall tarry. But in the meantime, let's look forward to what God is going to do in our church and in our community. And as we continue to just strive forward as we are so told to in the Bible, let's look forward to the great blessings that God has given us. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and God bless.